discuss the agenda again. So top of the hour, we're basically going to talk about a finance update, industry challenges that we potentially see coming ahead. We're going to talk about grants and education, audit results from FY 23, 24, and what we're going to look at on budget for 25. We're going to have some open discussion, some questions, which is great. We encourage the discussion, and then we're going to do an executive session, and then those here in person, we will do a lunch together. So a couple of these slides I'm going to show are also slides that I showed yesterday, and it's really important to understand the landscape in which we're trying to navigate. One thing I want to reiterate is that we're not being disparaging or negative or overly pessimistic about the view on the future, but we have to be clear-eyed about the challenges that not only we see, but our partners see as well. As you can see here, Jeep is experiencing little sweet child of mine to wake us up. It's a great ringtone. I love it. But as we see, like, the industry is facing a challenge, and there's a lot of factors that play into this. This is interest rates. This is the hangover from COVID effect. This is geopolitical uncertainty. There's a lot that's going on here. So as we try to read the tea leaves and look into the future about what it holds, we need to be looking at industry data to understand what that looks like. Hopefully, we'll have some clarity here in the next administration that will ease the problem. That is be something that a positive response in the marketplace. Big jobs. We've seen some oversupply issues. We've seen a decline in pricing. Depending what sector of the market you're looking at, some sectors are hurting more than others, but in general, we see a changing market ahead. And again, I'm going to share this slide again from yesterday, just because I want to reiterate the process of where we are in this. And a lot of things that we've looked at in the last few months, we have an action plan to try to resolve. Some of those things are around compliance and governance. Most of them lead back to transparency. Just look through the roadmap, what we're going to do to enact these changes. The big one here is create some balances to ensure that we're not waiting too long to make decisions based on that we're properly accounting for the challenges that we see. I'm going to talk about a topic a little bit later around revenue recognition, which has become a hot topic in the publicly traded company space. But really, since Sarbanes-Oxley was enacted. Sarbanes-Oxley was an act that was created after the Enron and WorldCom collapse that essentially was an accounting scheme that brought these companies in the world to their knees because they were statements of revenue and liability. So we're going to talk about some really fun topics like that. And I just want you to know that these are things that we have. So this exercise of understanding what the landscape we're operating in takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort. Just understand where you are, and then enacting the plan is kind of the next phase. I'm very sorry to disappoint you that Danielle is not here. I'm not Danielle, but I want to present her slides because education and grants are very important to her, and I want to explain why she's not here. I asked her if it was okay for us to talk about this, but she welcomed a beautiful baby boy on October 16th around 3 p.m. And this is a picture of her with her family, her beautiful family, and we are super, super excited for her, and we're very happy for her and her family. Everyone's doing great, and Danielle basically was sending emails and working basically until she gave birth, even though we asked her not to. But you all know who Danielle is. And I really adore her as a person and a human. She's the second person I met at Tread Lightly. I had met Caldwell a few years ago when I was at Rivian, and we had just done the media iron pot, and I had her literally on the phone to show to the and the founder of Rivian to say, hey, with this momentum, we have to codify a program. We have to have a partnership with Tread Lightly. And they were like, whatever, that's fine, go for it. I was like, Matt, Caldwell, we have to do something right. We have to sign this. It may never happen. He said, what is your partnership going to look like? And I said, well, the main thing that we want is we want our team to be educated. We want to codify.
There's some issues
On whose side?
our site projecting to everybody.
What do you mean?
They can't hear you. It's copied and
I think we might have an internet issue. So hold on just a second, because I don't want this to get missed.
Yeah, it's cutting in and out. I don't know if that's on my side or what, but
It looks like our internet may be slow. So we'll try a different Wi-Fi network. Hold on just.
Yeah, it cut out on me too. That's why I shut off my camera. I thought it was me.
I think it's breaking up for everybody. I got my mic working again, though. That's good.
Definitely breaking up on my side a bit as well.
It looks like from the comments, many of us are struggling with the sound.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do another mic test. Apparently we had a very slow internet connection. Can you guys
Good so
hear
far.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. We're in an old steel foundry with cinder block walls, so Wi-Fi is not necessarily the strong suit here. Okay, so I'm gonna actually talk about this again because I don't want anyone to miss this. So Danielle had this beautiful baby boy on October 16th at 3 o'clock, and we're super, super happy for her and excited for her. And she wishes she could be here just as much as we wish that she were here. And I wanted to share a little bit about how I came to meet Danielle. When I launched a partnership when I was at Rivian with Tread Lightly, and Caldwell said, what do you envision this partnership to look like? I basically said, I want training. I want education. That's what's most important to me. I want at least 5 people trained as master tread trainers, and I want to insert them in places all over the company so that they can inform the strategies we move forward. And he said, great, we have a class coming up in about 6 months. And I said, how about next week? And if you know Caldwell, you know what he said to that. He said, we'll do it. And it blew my mind, honestly, that it was possible to pull it together. But the reality is, it was Danielle who rallied and put this course together in record time. And she being the second person I met after Caldwell, I was just so inspired by how passionate she was, not just about Tread Lightly and the message, but the people. She draws people in. She is a light, and we are so grateful to have her. When I look at the history of Tread Lightly, and I learn more as I've come on board, I realize that she is a pillar of Tread Lightly that has really held this organization up for a decade. And we're super grateful to have her. And it's an honor for me to be able to share some of her slides about education. Again, this is a repeat from yesterday, but I wanna highlight and underscore this education component here, because we had over 490 people complete courses online and various types of education. This is a wonderful number. It's very strong, but I think you can probably also see this as an opportunity for growth for us, because our impact can be greater than it is today. And while I'm very excited that so many people were able to interact with us, we want to interact with more people. I'll share something really exciting about a development that's coming in FY25 that I think people will be really excited about. First off, thank you to those who have participated in the education like stack and those who have taught classes. I know Brandon has taught tread trainer classes, Laura's taught classes. It really is exciting to see the impact that we have. So Danielle taught a master tread trainer course to the scouts which will be known as Scouting America here in February 2025. And she told me how inspired she was by being able to interact with the folks. And it really just breathed new life into her around what the future could look like. There was a couple of trainer classes taught again, California, Nevada by Brandon and Laura. So thank you so much for doing that. It's just incredible when people get to see us in the field interacting with what we're so passionate about and that we love. There are awareness overviews taught all throughout the country and event sponsorship in Nevada. So thank you again to our team for getting the message out. Here's something that's really exciting. We haven't finalized like literally like 100%, but we're at the 1 yard line with securing some funding to modernize master tread trainer for next year. When we say modernize, it's a really interesting topic because it was initially published in 2007. When I think about the trails, the vehicles we saw on the trail in 2007, I had a Jeep Cherokee, for example. It weighed 3,000 pounds, had 200 horsepower. Today, we have vehicles that weigh 3 times that and have 1,000 horsepower, 800 horsepower. The vehicle products have changed tremendously in that amount of time. When you look at the side-by-side products that existed back then, they weren't the Baja ready, showroom, off the floor type of vehicles that we see today. So we need to make sure that our content actually addresses the needs and the uses that people have in 2025 and beyond. The other thing is a lot of the challenges around why we have not been able to touch more people with our Master Tread Trainer courses is developing a curriculum that's been set up for in person. We need to move more of our content online to where people can interact with it. To that point too, there's an issue of scale. If you have to get on a plane and take a bunch of binders with you and fly somewhere, that's expensive and it's hard to prepare for. It's very inefficient, truthfully, especially from a cost structure. So what we're doing is we're working with a partner who's infusing some funding into the program so that we can roll out more channels for people to access this educational content. And we're really excited about that because it will be able to touch today's needs. This will include, and we hope at least that it will include an LMS component to where people can do things asynchronously, not simultaneously, meaning not live. That if you are a busy person and it's an 8-hour course, you can do an hour at a time in modules. That just allows us to get our information out in the hands of more people. And ultimately, that is to grow the audience and grow impact. Not necessarily a tread trainer, master tread trainer element, but eventually this is something that we would like to monetize because there is a lot of cost that goes into this. If people were to pay a very small fee to receive, that certificate when they complete a course, I think a lot of people would be willing to do that. And it's something that we need to scope and analyze to be sure that we can scale in a way that doesn't scale our cost structure at the same time that we're scaling revenue. Again, one of the things that we touched on yesterday was the concept of margin. Margin is going to be incredibly important as we move forward because we have to have positive margin in the things we do. Here's a couple pictures from Danielle's Master Tread Trainer course. Again, she was really inspired by being able to work with these folks. And on the right here is a really cool picture from the very first Master Tread Trainer course that Danielle was a part of. And Evan, she said that you may recognize this person because they worked together. Exactly. This is Francesca. This was 10 years ago. And she just happened to be at this course as well. And Danielle said it was a really cool thing just to tie some history back to today. So again, Danielle was super energized to be able to be with these folks. And again, Danielle was days away from giving birth, and yet she still wanted to teach this class. We had an outdoor off-road event that she was begging Evan and I want to work it. I want to work it. And we said, no, like you're giving birth in like literally like a week. Like, please, like we appreciate your enthusiasm, but we're worried about you. So that just shows what kind of a person that Danielle is and the light that she brings. And I wasn't sure if this part was cut out earlier, but when I've learned about Tread Lightly history and when I've gotten to know Danielle, I recognize that she really has been a backbone and pillar of Tread Lightly to bring us where we are today. I really don't think that we would be where we are without her, and I'm super grateful for her. So moving into her slides around funding. This is the grant funding process that she goes through on a regular basis that is a challenging process. And I want to pause here and talk a little bit about the data things that we've been discussing over the last 2 days. In an ideal world, you have one system of record that holds your contracts and holds all of the financial data, that when you need a view or you need a report, it's just that. You are looking into the system and you're saying, give me these fields, and it spits out a report. In order to look at our view of funding today, we have multiple disparate systems that don't talk to each other. So Danielle goes through incredible lengths to take data out of multiple sources and scrub it and clean it up and throw it into smart sheets in order to get us any type of analysis. That's not really sustainable. That is problematic for a few reasons. One is the fidelity of the data sometimes gets lost as you go through that process. Everyone is imperfect, and that means that little tiny mistakes with copy and pasting and formulas end up creating an entropy within your system to where one small mistake may cascade and affect, again, the fidelity and the accuracy of the data. The other thing is it's not real time. If you are a program manager and you have a budget of X dollars and you don't know how much is left to spend in real time, how do you ensure that you are not overspending your budget or potentially equally worse, underspending your budget? Some of these dollars are the types that if you don't use them, you have a harder time getting that same level of funding in the future. So it's kind of amazing, in my opinion, that we've been as accurate as we have been in the past, being able to get to close out those funded agreements without going over and without going under. What we need to do in the future is make sure that we have fewer systems and the systems we have talk to each other so that the program managers, they understand their budget and they have a daily view into it, not a quarterly view. The other thing is the way that invoicing and billing is done in this system, again, is very disconnected. There's not one source for Danielle and now Alexis Nelson, who is filling in for Danielle. By the way, thank you, Alexis. We're super appreciative to have you. There's so much work that goes into the invoicing process that people have to stop what they're doing and spend a couple of weeks just focused on invoicing because we don't have that system of record. If the system of record, which would be today, the accounting system is QuickBooks, if everything was stored in one place, and when program managers are doing reimbursement reports and things are being coded, that it's going directly into that ledger, it should really be an exercise of a few minutes, not a few weeks, in order to create these invoices. We must get there. Danielle, her time is so precious and her knowledge is so valuable. I don't want her spending weeks every quarter sending out invoicing. That's just not an efficient use of time. And for example, and this is why I'm drilling into this right now, is that this was the view that my brain wanted to see. I just said, Danielle, tell me what grant we have, what the original amount was, and what's left to spend. And she was like, well, yeah, I can get that to you, but it'll take some time. I was like, why? That should be instantaneous. Well, you have to understand all the things that go into this. And so we did sit together for a long time. She helped me understand that. And I said, okay, well, now that we have this view, I just want to know how much do we have left in personnel versus program costs, because those are really different things. We've had this interesting change in the grant funding structure, as I understand it, where the allocation that goes to personnel has reduced relative to how much goes to program costs. That's great if you have a ton of volunteers to do the work for you and you're just acquiring materials. But as Kay mentioned yesterday, it's been a challenge getting volunteers at times. And so when we have a fixed cost structure, which we do here, that's salaried. Everyone who works for Tread Lightly is a salaried employee. That's something I'm really happy about. I think that that provides stability for people. I think that provides a level of confidence that we have with each other, and I'm grateful for that. However, that is also a really big challenge to try to have funding for it if your personnel funding is decreasing relative to your program costs. So this view here that we're going to delve into basically looks at the original award of each agreement and what's left to spend in personnel versus program costs. There's a couple places in the country that we're very strong with funding. Arizona looks fantastic. And that is largely due to the work that Caldwell did in the past, that Shaughnessy and Michelle have done. In fact, as you saw yesterday in one of Michelle's slides, one of the gentlemen that we work with in Arizona, Matt Eberhardt, said that Arizona sees more value for the money that they put into personnel for Tread Lightly than any other partner they give money to. That is an incredible accomplishment, and we're very, very proud that they feel that way, and we want to continue serving that partner really well. So Arizona looks really solid. If you look at these numbers, you can see that there's $308K left in the budget to pay personnel. Also keep in mind that some of these have interesting expiration dates of when the funding goes through. Our fiscal year ends on 9/30. Some of these agreements end on 12/31. Some of these include FY25 and FY26. To zoom in to the details of that data is challenging. That will be a repeating theme here. But keep in mind that some of these aren't just FY25, but they cover FY26 as well. As you see here in Nevada, we have a challenge on the personnel side. When Laura was brought on, we had pretty good funding, and then that slowly changed. And that's through no fault of anyone at all. It's just the landscape that we're dealing with. One of the things that we're trying to do here, as you can see with the 2024 Nevada OHV Commission grant, is submit a mod or modification saying, hey, thank you for $112,000 left to spend on program costs. We need it for personnel because Laura is in Nevada. And as you saw again yesterday, Laura does a lot. She does a lot. And if we can allocate some of that funding towards personnel, it would be a massive win for us. I'm kind of a newbie when it comes to understanding these grants and agreements, however. And so what I've been told is that it's unlikely and it will be challenging to get that modification approved. But it is a tactic that we're trying for these places where we don't have that same level of support and funding like we do in Arizona. Oregon has been incredible as well. Ian Caldwell, who Ellen mentioned yesterday, has been a great partner and has been a huge advocate for Tread Lightly. And so we have pretty strong funding there to not just cover FY25, but it looks like it will be pretty solid for the future as well. So we're very grateful for that funding. Utah. So this largely goes to cover CABE's personnel, and we have pretty good funding there. But as you heard again yesterday, CABE said he was buried. He was working really hard. He was working basically 24/7 for the entire busy season. We could use like 3 more CABEs in Utah. He mentioned we may have to turn down some work because we don't have enough funding to bring in more people. So again, this is potentially a very challenging situation as we move forward in the future. On the BLM side of things and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife side of things, we have a few grants, which we're again grateful for. But as we look at West Virginia, for example, we only have around $10,000 of personnel funding that's remaining to spend. And that's Region 9, which is a huge region. So to have funding only that relates to West Virginia in this large of an area, it's a challenge for us. On the BLM agreement side, we're grateful for this money, and we have really good funding, relatively speaking, in Alaska. Laura just went up to Alaska, and one of the things that's really cool about having those pre-existing relationships and people already knowing her up there is that we're able to have tremendous impact right out of the gate, as opposed to that kind of ramp-up stage. But as you know, things will be expensive, and traveling to Alaska is expensive, and it's hard, and there's seasonality to it. And so while this number looks really great, we're going to focus on driving value for our partners in Alaska so that we can continue this trajectory of having a good, strong relationship with the BLM in Alaska and getting great work done for them. This Washington office agreement, that is technically Washington, D.C. So that was a little confusing to me at first, but that's our D.C. agreement, the national level agreement. We are entering the last year of a 5-year agreement, and we're reapplying. We know that there's funding challenges for our federal partners, and we recognize that, and we need to be clear-eyed that there is potentially a risk there with getting that renewed. And then we also do have a little bit of funding here in the BLM agreement for Nevada for Laura. U.S. Forest Service. The U.S. Forest Service agreements are our lifeblood to help fill the gaps in other places, especially that national level agreement. When we don't have a place to charge our time to, largely that's me. That's some of our leadership. When there's not specific projects that we can charge our time to, that fills in those gaps. And we're super glad to have this funding. And so I don't know if Scott is on the line today, Scott Haas, but I just want to say thank you to him. And funny enough, when I signed our extension, our agreement, I noticed that the address was local to me in Denver. And Come to find out, he only lives a couple miles away from me. So Scott, we need to get lunch or hang out sometime or go hit the trail. It'd be amazing. So thank you for that funding. And as you kind of see here throughout all of the structured agreements, we have around $67,000 left in funding for all U.S. Forest Service agreements. I do want to drill into this just a little bit more because we've probably all heard that, again, our friends at the U.S. Forest Service, they're facing some challenges. These are not meant to be disparaging in any way, shape, or form. These are articles that have been coming out that make us concerned for our friends, because if they don't have the funding that they need to do their job, it will also cascade through the system and affect other things as well. So I just want to throw a caution sign out there that as we look to FY25 and beyond, we may need to restructure how we look at our ideal funding levels for the various agreements. Now, we have multiple pillars of funding. One is grants, one is membership, and one is partnerships. And so there are things that we can do to try to make that funding mix more stable in the future. And that's why I love Mandy's slides so much. And that's why she probably thinks, why do you always bug me about my numbers? Because I think it's such an exciting opportunity for us in the future. And that's something that we're going to have to figure out ways to allocate funding in different areas. So what does it all mean? When you roll all of those slides up that I just showed you, what is the overall picture that we have? So when you look at, a high level and you say, wow, we have 1.9 million in awards and 1.35 left to spend, that is fantastic. Only 666K of it, though, is related to personnel. And again, keep that in mind, that actually stretches over multiple fiscal years. When you zoom into what's really allocated for FY25, and again, the data is difficult to sift through, it's much lower than the 666 number. And it's kind of ominous that I triple checked the math and I was like, yeah, that checks out, actually, unfortunately. So we have to just be cognizant when we have a fixed cost structure, and we're going to talk about the budget here and the financials here in a moment. We have a fixed cost structure where everyone's salaried, and that ranges around $1.4 million per year. If only, let's call the full 666 as, going towards that, it's a pretty big hole that needs to be covered elsewhere. So how do we make sure that we're resilient within our team structure to where people do feel that they have a safe and protected space where they can do their best work and not worry about this stuff? That does lead me to my next point, though, is that even though I don't want people to worry, this is a call to action. This is a moment where we have to double down on our efforts to become far more efficient, to generate greater impact, to articulate the ROI that we have to our partners, to articulate the value that we provide. One of the things I said yesterday is that 5 years from now, when we talk to our partners, I want them to look back and say, I don't know where my business would be without Tread Lightning. The value they drove for us was tremendous. Nobody else could have driven our business forward like them. That's not necessarily the view that I think a lot of people look at a nonprofit who is known for, going out and building fences and picking up trash and stuff. But that is where we're going. We are essentially a force of consultants. When we look at the room, when I look at Lowell and the experience that he has in the tire industry, when we've looked at our partners in the tire industry, we say, hey, instead of doing a trash cleanup for you, we'll help you with the tire launch. We have great data. We have great research. We have expertise that can drive your business forward. Sure, we can do a trash cleanup if you want, but let us focus on helping your business. That reduced our cost structure because Lowell's not getting on a plane or getting in a car and going out and buying things. It also helps with visibility. It's easier for Lowell to hop on a Zoom call with someone than if he has to get on a plane and go somewhere. So he has that closer contact. And that continues this idea of us providing more value while also controlling our cost structure. I do want to give Lowell a shout out, and this technically does fall into FY25, but it's relevant here. We had a partner that last year had a certain level of funding, and we had 3 deliverables for it. In order for us to accomplish those deliverables, we consumed the entire budget and maybe a little more. When he renegotiated, he dropped that to 1 deliverable, which basically lowers our cost tremendously and increased the amount that we got out of that partnership by 25%. That was brilliant. So thank you all. You did an awesome job. And Lowell's done a lot of great work, but I was super proud of that one because that is future focused. That is where we need to go. We need to be cognizant of costs. We need to drive value, and that will allow us to get higher levels of contribution from our memberships and our members. Now, this is the really fun part. I'm going to talk about revenue recognition. So I was in college from 2001 to 2005, and I kept hearing this word SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, again and again and again. And I was like, what is that? This is so nerdy. This is so lame. And then we did some business cases to deconstruct what happened with Enron and WorldCom. And this was actually a lot more common in that era of time, where things were being misallocated on the revenue and expense side. I know that this sounds really, really boring, but the high-level way to explain this particular concept, which is called ASC 606, which is a revenue recognition component, is that when you receive money in, it has to be tethered to deliverables within a contract, and you recognize revenue as those deliverables are achieved. So a good example, a good analogy, I should say, that I think will bring this to life for most people in the room. Let's say that you're a manufacturer of rooftop tents, and you do it in your garage and you do a really, really nice rooftop tent. And you charge $10,000 for these tents, and you can only do one per month. You sign a 2-year, 24-month agreement with someone where every month, at the first of the month or the end of the month, you provide one rooftop tent for $10,000. That's $120K a year of revenue to you, $240K over the life of the agreement. The person says, I love your product so much, I'm busy, I just want to go ahead and cut you a check for the full amount now. There's $240,000, you just ship them to me when you're ready. A cash level of accounting would record $240,000 as revenue at that point in time. Cash basis of accounting is not what we use. It's not what most businesses use. We use something called accrual accounting. You basically take in that cash and you record the cash in your balance sheet, but you also record a liability. Because that $240,000 that you have in your bank account, it's not yours yet because you haven't delivered any products yet. Every month when you deliver a $10,000 tent, you recognize $10,000 in revenue and you relieve $10,000 from that liability. That liability is called deferred revenue or unearned revenue. Every single month as you make those deliveries, you burn down $10,000 from that liability and you put it up to the P&L. Again, I know this is really nerdy and you're probably wondering, why are you even talking about this? When I joined the organization, I did kind of a deep dive of what has been going on and just trying to understand like where our financial position is. First off, I want to say it's very strong. There's been an incredible level of support for Tread Lightly over the last several years. There's been some incredibly great one-time things that happened, like the Hummer donation. That's incredible. I remember Caldwell, he called me when he found out that deal was going to happen. He was just, it was the happiest I had ever heard his voice. He was like, can you believe this? And I said, no, man, like, this is freaking awesome. Like, congratulations. That was awesome. During COVID, there were PPP loans that were granted, that were then forgiven. And on top of that, as we saw in the slides yesterday on the membership revenue at the $100 level, because the average sales price of Jeeps went up so much during that period of time that people said, man, this makes a ton of sense to give Tread Lightly $100 so I can save thousands on my Jeep Wrangler. So we had a lot of these factors that came together that were amazing, that led us to a balance sheet that's very strong and very allows us to be resilient through hard times. There were some other things that were noticed, though, how at certain times, some cash was recognized as revenue when it came in, as opposed to being reported as a liability. There's one in particular that stood out to me because it's a disparate individual like contract with one of our partners. And I said, shoot, this kind of looks like the way we recorded at the time was revenue instead of deferred revenue. After talking with the finance team and our audit team, who is currently conducting audits, they said, shoot, you know what? You're right. This was actually tied to a contract with deliverables. Those deliverables have not been achieved yet. We're going to have to reclass that. Reclass sounds like one of those concepts. It's like, whatever, you just move from here to there. But there are real impacts to your financials when that happens. When you move something that was income on your P&L and you move it to a balance sheet, that creates what looks like a loss at that point in time. The impact of that loss for FY23 which those financials are just about to be published through the audit process, was around $245,000. And in FY24, which has yet to be audited and yet to be finalized, is about $303,000. The particular contract that this related to has an original budget of $610,000 of spend, and we've incurred only about $128,000 of those costs, meaning that we have $481,000 left to spend on it. You're going to see that $481,000 on as a line item that's isolated on the budget for FY25. And it's important to contemplate and understand that these are funds that were received in the past that needed to be spent in the future. So because of this reclassification, it will look like an effective loss of that because of this reclass. And one of the things that's really important to recognize with ASA 606 is revenue recognition occurs when the control, when the control transfers to the entity. So again, in the rooftop tent example, every time I deliver a completed rooftop tent, that's when I recognize revenue. Yeah, Shaughnessy, I see you have a question.
Just.
Yeah, can you read it?
Jan's asking, the question for Stewart is, are we making a rules change on how we recognize revenue or catching previous errors?
That's a great question, Jan. I'm so glad you brought that up because one of the things here is under creating checks and balances and updating policies and controls is something that we're committed to going forward. So we're doing both. We're looking back and we're relying on our auditors to help us find these potential reclasses. But going forward, we are changing the way we structure these deals. Part of this too is being sure that the right people are in the loop early on so that they understand that there is a performance contract behind things. It was actually funny last night. Someone mentioned this to me. Oh, hey, by the way, about a year ago, we got some money and we didn't deliver on it yet, and we still have to. And it's like, shoot, that's ASC 606 right there, because we have a contract, we signed it for a deliverable. We haven't delivered it yet, but we recognize the cash in the past. Now, most of these will be immaterial. And the reason why this one stood out so much is because it's not an immaterial amount, it is material. And so part of the reason why I think that the auditors maybe hadn't seen this earlier or sooner is that they didn't have the same level of visibility into the organization that I would like to have. I am a very transparent person because I don't know everything. I don't know everything. So I want to be sure, hey, auditors, hey, Stewart, hey, team, I feel like this is what we should do. How do you feel? Is this right? Yeah. Does this check all the boxes? Fantastic. I can't be a silo. I can't be someone who holds information because I'm not perfect. I don't want to make mistakes. So we need to loop people in sooner, and we need to be more transparent when we have these obligations. Because when you sign a contract, you are signing an obligation. That is a really important concept to understand, that you have a legal obligation to perform on those deliverables. So we need to be sure that people are on the same page and say, hey, this is transparent. Are we good? I know this is going to sound really scary, but I don't mean this to. My goal as a leader is to be replaceable. I want to make myself replaceable. So that in the future, if and when I leave, the organization just keeps humming right along like, hey, where'd that guy go? He used to be here, but we don't really need him. I want every single person in this room to be a leader where they can step up and they can handle this stuff and they can understand what's going on. I think I overwhelmed Kristen at first because I was like, hey, you're doing a great job on this invoicing stuff. Can I teach you more about accounting? Are you interested? And she was like, not really, but okay, if I need to. Which is awesome. But like truly, like I want every single person in this room to be able to read a P&L, to understand a balance sheet, to understand revenue recognition, because it's important. I personally also like to help people grow professionally, and that doesn't mean staying at the same role for their whole career. I've changed roles about every 3 to 4 years, my whole life. I like that. I think it's important to drive impact, help people, and move on and continue to spread that wherever you can. And so if there's people who say, I've been doing this role forever, but I really want to do this role, that makes me happier than just about anything. I don't think that employee retention, in an HR term, is a driver of happiness. I don't think that that is necessarily linked. I think sometimes people get stuck in what they've always been doing because they're good at it and people rely on them for that. But in order for people to grow, they need to understand as much of the business as they possibly can, because when you do, you're probably going to find something that you're like, wow, that's really cool. And I've never been exposed to that before. I'm here to help with that. And part of that process is understanding these sort of abstract concepts that are really behind the scenes, some of the things that drive business.
So
Hopefully that answered your question.
I'm clear, sort of. Did we go back and sort of reread the contracts and then realize that we necessarily didn't account for it properly? And then moving forward, you've restructured the contracts to basically lay out financially the way you want them to lay out. Is that kind of what you said?
100%. You're exactly right.
Then I get it.
And great reading of that. Thank you, Jan.
Oh, thank you.
Can I just say make a quick comment about this? I think this is great, Matt, that we're doing this, and we certainly want to try and match our revenue expenditures and have a properly stated thing. ASC 606, and the reason why this is new and different to us is because this was a service-related contract with a for-profit company. If the state of Wyoming, they gave us $30,000 for a Jeep a couple years ago, and we didn't buy it till 2 years later. In the nonprofit world, if it's a government grant, you can restrict things for time and purpose. And so the profit still, if it's a government grant, it flows through when you collect it, and then it sits on your balance sheet as a temporary restricted net assets. And so we use restrictions, not necessarily unearned revenue. The reason why this went from, it's not a government grant, originally it was structured as a service contract, which we don't do a lot of service work. We do government grants, fulfillment work. So a service contract with a for-profit entity is structured slightly different than a government grant. And so since we entered an agreement, a multiple year agreement, and then the question would be of what's unknown. So here's the positives. We have an unmodified clean opinion on our audit. And so what we have to do, make sure and do properly, is to make sure that when we're going to recognize the revenue as we fulfill it. So for example, the 245 was when I say a rate class, that was certainly revenue that we're going to go put into unearned revenue on the balance sheet. The 303, basically what happens at the end of the year, the question would be as we account for them, how much of that was fulfilled? That contract's supposed to end in January. Since we have not fulfilled it, then there's what's going to get put into unearned revenue is what's unfulfilled. And so there's a couple ways of doing it. If one, we can throw everything on our balance sheet and then bring back it afterward, or throw it on our profit and loss and move it to the balance sheet. And so I guess the reason why it wasn't necessarily not discovered because of the auditor didn't have a deep dive, it was because this is like the first time we had a service contract with a for-profit entity and it's because we normally do these with government entities that we recognize it right up front. So I guess that was a slight difference. But the good thing about doing this is anytime you match your commitments with your cash flow, you want to be able to have a true purpose of how it's going to affect your financials. And so that's the only thing I wanted to add.
No, thank you for that, Stewart. And you're exactly right. And again, like, this isn't an indictment of any person or process or things or anything like that. This came from a curiosity, because I've spent my entire career in the for-profit world. In fact, in the last company that I joined, I was hired to literally establish the treasury and risk functions and debt raising, and went through multiple rounds of debt raising and helped take the company public and raised literally over $15 billion before we made anything. So this type of accounting structure for me is completely new. And so this was more of just hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how big are the things out there on our relationships? And I kind of just started with the biggest one because it was the most material. And that kind of curiosity was like, well, in the past, I've seen it handled like this, but this is nonprofit. And so it really was a journey of curiosity that led us here. And it's just a concept to try to take us to a level of transparency that will allow us to be more have more open, robust conversations, because again, I want to lean on the expertise within the board, within the team, and within our financial partners to say, how do we best secure a resilient future for Tread Lightly for the next 40 years? So with that, Stewart, would you mind sharing some information about the budget? So the next couple slides are how 24 ended, what 25 looks like, and then we'll kind of reconvene and have an open discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks. Yeah, so I like to call go back to our three main revenue streams: the membership, grants, and kind of our donations. And you can see on the net operating loss, it shows 384,000 there on the 2024. And pretty much almost all of that difference, about 348 of it or so, is that the difference in the memberships, the 928 to the 603 in memberships. That's a lot of it's referencing the Jeep grant, the Jeep graph that Matt showed earlier. And so we're heavily relying upon that. I would say the slight positives on the membership are renewals. Our renewing memberships were actually stronger than anticipated. So it was the new at $100 level was the primary driver of that, with a few official partnerships. So that was the primary reason. The government grants, you can see we're going to do about 1.3, and we budgeted 1.4. That's pretty strong, which was great. But the challenge there is we've seen a flip in exactly what Matt was referencing is our categories. If we are really strong financially, if we can get kind of about 60% of our grants, percentages of our grants covering labor, and more went to program cost than to labor. And so if we can't reimburse our personnel, so those were our two kind of main challenges this year. A real highlight that I kind of like to see that when I see that donations at 143, we budgeted 150. It wasn't but a couple of years ago that number was about 15 to 25,000. So over the last couple of years, I think we've done a consistent basis to get our annual donations up. In conjunction with that, it's real nice to see our interest in dividends. We have saved the money, so as money's come in, we've been able to put it away for our rainy day, with exactly what we're probably going to be coming into this next year. And then so that's what's making up most of the actuals for this year. I would say the highlight that I'd like to see is that you can see that under indirect expenses, that 172,735 for in that first column there. We run this organization incredibly lean. That's including, that's the copiers and the utilities and the internet, the rent, my fees. That's what I would call our overhead, and that's been incredibly lean. Which is when I say that's so we're I would say very nimble. We have increased our personnel and program personnel over the last couple of years, but as far as a lean commitment to our indirect cost has been very good. Which about 93% of all of the money that comes in goes out to the program, so that's real strong. And going into the kind of the 2025 proposed budget, you can see that we're trying to budget this net operating income about 8,300. To do that, you'll notice a couple of things. One, there's a couple of categories we put on there called BRP unearned revenue, and then the BRP FY25 revenue. That's still what's remained to be billed on that project. Now there's a question. The first operating expense category is called project to be fulfilled. That is the estimate right this second of what it would take to fulfill that. If it were to come in under that could be a chance for the organization to have some increased profits. But as of right now, there's a little bit of an unknown of what's going to take to fulfill that commitment. And so that BRP unearned revenue and BRP FY25 revenue and the project to be fulfilled is all related to that one contract. Now Then I would say the other highlights of our grant revenue, you see the government grants at 1.15. It is less than the 1.3 we did this year. The positives to this number is those are all currently under contract. Like those are signed, sealed, committed. Like we know those, those not like we're waiting on new money. Again, the challenge is right now we used to budget 60% for personnel. Now we're sitting at about 20. And so that's the amendment process that Matt's was talking about, trying to go see if we can take some of the program expenses in that 600 category and get that reclassified up to personnel and work with our partners. The organization's done a real strong job the last couple of years investing in all those different regions. And I hope our partners can see the value of helping work with us to cover that labor to keep it there. So that'll be a good action plan there. So, so that grant revenue is already committed. And then, like I said, the membership is trying to hold it still. I'm hoping that membership at 615 is a good, strong number that we can continue to drive and hope that we can maintain that. It was about 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were doing about 300 and we jumped to 900. And I'm hoping that we can keep it at that 615 level.
Hey, Stewart, Jan, two questions. One on program expenses, the 469 to 715 this year. Can you just remind me what that was? And then number 2, where did the reclasses hit in this sort of overall view?
So when you say the reclass, the 245 was in the previous year, which was in 23. The 315, you guys have not seen it. It would have been sitting in, originally it would have been in government grants, and you'd have seen an extra 300,000 as if we broke even this year.
Got it.
So it hasn't, I wouldn't want to say reclassified it. We just had it on there at the end of the year. We run a report that says, hey, what potential restricted money do we have outstanding? But since it happened before the end of the year, that's not like it was just already done. So you guys haven't had to see it, but we would have been closer to a break even. But what it's helping us do is match what we would have had to explain is if we would have shown a break even or close to it this fiscal year, and then all of a sudden we have $481,000 of expenses to be billed next year, and we spent that earlier in the year, then you'd see a giant loss and be like, hey, what's that about? So
okay. And then the program expenses, you probably covered it and I missed it.
Well, so that's the challenge when I say the trick that I think Matt was referencing to try and say, hey, now in the past, our theory, and it's worked for a long time, is to try and say, we're going to try and budget, 60% of these grants to labor, 30% to travel and program costs, and then 10 to indirect. And then hopefully as memberships come in and these official partners, we can kind of add value and spend some of that money to do extra stewardship projects and go out and do these, all of our initiatives. Right. And so as money's come in over the last 3 years, what we would do is we committed to certain projects and we had to fulfill those out. And as certain ones run. And so we just had spent more money than kind of anticipated on that piece of it. And so one of the kind of the tricks is we usually spend between kind of 300,000 and 450,000. That 600 right now is written into grants that we have to spend, that the organization still has to go work with the grantors to say, hey, what signs, what activities do we want to do it? And then the question is can we go out and do different activities for, when I say slightly less? And so that's the hard part about, I wish we could have run your system and run a report that says, hey, we know exactly what we have left to spend. When we get a government grant document, they say, hey, here's $100,000 and here's some personnel. And then we go work with them to say, well, what signs do you want? What do you want? A video? Do you want, you know what I mean? So it's still kind of to be decided upon. And so we kind of throw in that estimate based off our categories, basically.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jan, just a comment on that. That's part of what Matt talked about yesterday on contractual arrangements that we have. And so in some cases, we weren't as clear as we could be. And so that's one of the efforts that Matt's taking moving forward for that transparency, is making sure that we have documented with our partners exactly what we're going to deliver and how we're going to deliver it. And that helps us on the cost expenditure and forecast. That today we don't have as good a transparency as we need, nor do we have it contractually articulated as well enough as we need. So those are kind of 2 points to make. And then the third point is, and Matt's mentioned this a couple times, is our system limitations do not allow us to quickly and accurately assess what we've spent and what we have to come. And so that's kind of an effort going forward that we need to improve on.
You know, I remember the 39 systems, getting them all down to one, and then the amount of work that Danielle does to cut, paste, sanitize, and clean up the data. So this makes total sense. Thank you, Harold.
Yeah, and the other thing, Jen, and for the rest of the board, the executive board has spent a lot of time with Matt and Stewart, and particularly Kristen, who's in the room. I mean, she, as our treasurer, has really led the charge from the executive board side, and we have spent hours and hours and hours on this to get it to this point, and we fully support what Matt's trying to do in I would say providing better clarity, more transparency, and making sure that we're following all of the accounting principles that we need to be.
Makes total sense. I was just asking for clarification. Didn't mean any judgment. I can imagine how hard you guys are working. And,
no, I mean, and it's not a judgment response. It's more of a clarification, so you guys know that this is not something that we just pulled out of the numbers. This is something that's been worked on and worked on and worked on, because it's not been an easy year given the inflationary discussion that we had yesterday. And as we all know, it's an election year on top of that. So budgets are constricted.
makes sense. Thank you.
I would say the other just a couple facts on the personnel side. Right now there's no COLAs or raises. This was straight normal. Really, the only thing I think we really added is on the indirect. You see, it goes up to 206. There's some legal and HR services that we just kind of budgeted for. We've never really budgeted for legal HR, so we added about $16,000 to kind of cover that. We did renew our lease for our facility space. That's in the indirect costs. We have a great spot there in North Salt Lake that really works well. That has like half office, half warehouse space, has good storage that we're able to stay for the next 3 years. So that's been done. But all in all, there's not a ton of change as far as what we budgeted for. This is just making sure we fulfilled our commitments. And then the only final thing I'd like to just make sure and reference is, so that when we go to the balance sheet here in a minute, that BRP unearned revenue of 454 plus of the use of last year's donations, that 481, that is already collected off money. The 481 that on the use of last year's donations, that's not necessarily revenue. That's our way of showing how we fund the operating expenses. So you know that what we have is going to get covered next year. And then, like I say, here's, I think the great news is we've got 1.7 in cash at the end of the year. You know what we did? We have a couple of different savings account. You'll see that Fortis, as well as our kind of our money market with the Wells Fargo. So call it that 535 plus the 876. Those are sitting in good interest bearing brokerage accounts that yielded that 66 or so thousand bucks. So I would say we've optimized our cash. None of it's in stocks or any sort of risk. That we could transfer that all to cash tomorrow and put it in our checking as needed. And then you'll see our accounts receivable at 227. That where it says other current assets, there's another accounts receivable. That is my estimated quarter four grant billings for as we build down the last quarter of grants that we forecasted that's going to be. And then pretty much the only, and you can see fixed assets. Our main asset we have on there that has book value is that we bought a Jeep a couple years ago. And then that new other assets is that called right of use assets. That's how that there was a new accounting pronouncements for how you structure lease agreements. So pretty much that's our copier machine. So we have over a couple $1 million of assets with, when you say the 1.7 plus the 227 and the 234, almost all of what we have was what we consider current assets, which is cash or pretty much money we're going to collect in the next 90 days. So that's a very strong financial position. And then on the next slide, I have the balance sheet, the liability side. But and when I say in a good spot here, that accounts payable is pretty much just what we have in accruing our final bills to, as we spent down some of those grants, part of our accrued salaries, our lease, and then just the deferred rent. And then you'll see that new unearned revenue of 454 sitting on there. That's that money on that related to that BRP agreement. But the organization doesn't have any debt. We just have our main trade payables there and our rent and copier payment. So in a good spot. And then this is where on the equity side, we see total equity of 1.6 million. That 1 million, I've called it just board designated savings. That is when I say an artificial number, you guys can do whatever you want with that 1.6 million as a board. That was kind of, when I say my and Caldwell's way of saying, hey, let's try to set aside internally about $1 million as we got to that point. And then say, so this is a good way of the equity section of here handling some of those restrictions. Say, hey, yeah, we want to invest in a new program. We want to invest in a new area with money, unrestricted funds the entity has. This is as how we would show it on your financial statements. And so it's when I say kind of a great tool, but the organization is, like I say, still in a good, it's in a strong financial position. And I know we have uncertainties on some of the revenue coming in and just the viability of the market of our funding sources, but the organization's in a good spot.
This is all that was also to help you guys weather the storm and such too, though, right?
Exactly.
Ups and downs. There was confidence across the entire team that, this doesn't impact necessarily programs or people or things like that. That was one of the original intents too.
Exactly. Yeah. This is, like I say, when I say don't mind the spotlight, and you look clear back to FY19, the blue stuff was our cash and then our AR. It wasn't not that long ago. We'd have to turn around that billing awfully quick to get going. So as we've had a couple good solid years in when I say those memberships and driving that up, we were able to, we've kept it. And I will say this is our personnel has increased. We used to sit about 10 people. Now we sit about 15, 16 people. And so we've always been able to go into budgets to say, hey, what percent is covered, knowing that new grants could be written. I think the challenge right now, with it being an election year, as well as just kind of like say where the markets is our forecasting of the grants of getting it to personnel, and it just feels like the whole market's in a little bit of a holding pattern, and we have a bigger piece to cover. So our budget's grown from 1.5 million to 2.5 million. So it's just a bigger spot, but we are in a good place.
Thank you.
We have a quick question from Kristen, who's about to join us here.
I don't know what I want to. Okay, well, I nerded out and I'm just taking a few notes, but I just wanted to highlight a few quick things. And Stewart, thanks for chiming in on some of those pieces too. So Matt and I have majorly nerded out in spreadsheet land. And for those of you who know me, I do marketing and PR, not spreadsheets. But we've lived in that land for quite some time. And thank you to the rest of the executive committee. But a few things I want everybody to hear is this is a result of what's going on economically. There are just some things that we had to factor in there and to consider. But this budget overall, as we look to this next fiscal year, it's very conservative. And we don't have a crystal ball. So if anybody has one, please let me know, because I'd love it for other reasons too. But Matt's also new to the organization, right? And we're also in this interesting economic climate. And so we didn't want to set out with huge, audacious goals either. But this isn't unsurmountable, right? Like, this is not the biggest challenge that Tread Lightly has ever faced. And so I just want you guys to hear that too, that I think it's really important to know that we approach this from a very conservative angle, and not jumping in too deep just because we don't know what the future is going to bring. Also, I think Matt is bringing a new level of sophistication to our finances and our books. The organization has grown astronomically, right? Like, you guys have moved from this very, slow-paced organization. And I know this from being here for the last 6 years, where we were going to sell, snow cones for fundraising efforts. That's not a joke. If you want to hear that story, come find me later. And now we're moving into this.
Remember that. That was
Jan, why are we even here?
A new low. Yes.
I know. So things have definitely progressed and it's exciting. So what I'm seeing here, again, the marketing nerd who also loves money, is I'm seeing a new level of sophistication in our books and the way that we approach things. And so when we look at all of this, and these are conversations that we've had with Stewart too, and Matt and I have talked a lot about this, is also doing quarterly reviews. As Matt said, it's important that you all understand how a P&L works. And I remember when I first started my PR and marketing agency, I had a bookkeeper running things. And then for that second year of my business, I actually pulled it in-house and I ran the books, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand how it works. And you guys need to understand how it works, because you're a nonprofit, but we're moving to that next level of sophistication of starting to operate like a for-profit business and starting to operate like a well-oiled machine. So I think that's also important for you guys to understand, is that we're looking at this with a new layer of sophistication, and all of the financial reviews will now happen quarterly, and we'll have some of those new data inputs versus looking back at the end of the year and being like, oh, what do we do this year, right? So thank you, Matt, for allowing me to kind of filter some of those levels of sophistication in. But this guy knows finances inside and out. So I think, again, the organization is really lucky to have Matt on board, because now we're able to look things in a different light. So, okay, those were my talking points for now. Okay.
Okay, I think you have one more slide, Stewart. Here we go.
Yeah, the takeaways I'd like to just kind of leave you with is just to say, hey, we're in a good lean spot. When I say I would call it, we're nimble, right? Oh, I get a lot of questions from different clients in different aspects, and we don't have debt. The overhead's lean. We're in a good spot, and we have saved for the rainy day. And so, but our grant budgets have been reducing the labor, and that'll be a focus point in communicating that with our partners going forward, that's going to be an ongoing need in our kind of our value proposition to them. And then the other thing is just our membership revenue is still heavily correlated to those Jeep sales. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stewart. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the collaboration and this effort to move towards just a higher level of transparency. And in reality, I think that in order for us to make informed decisions about the future, we just have to understand on a more timely basis. And so, again, I'll take responsibility for the fact that the first few months I've been here, you haven't heard a lot from me. I've been heads down trying to figure things out so that I had an informed opinion when I opened my mouth. There's the old famous quote, I believe it was Mark Twain, that said, it's better to look like an idiot and remain silent than open your mouth and remove all doubt. I didn't want to look like an idiot, and I couldn't answer a lot of these questions a few months ago. And so I wanted to be sure that we're in a place where we have the confidence in what we're saying before we come to you. And I'll come to you more often. And I appreciate, people reaching out saying, what do you need? What are you working on? How can I help? As you see in FY25 and beyond, I think we're going to have some uncertainty for years to come, not just in the financial space, but in the world. The world is kind of a scary place right now. That means that we need to have each other's backs, and we need to come together and share with each other how we can help And I will lean on the expertise here because the board is made up of an incredible number of people who've been around for a long time. There's that historical perspective and your industry experts. And some of you are finance experts, some marketing experts. And so we need to come together and make sure that Tread Lightly is really resilient for that next level of growth, that next generation. There were times that I was really scared as I walked through this process, but now we're in a place where we're sharing everything and I feel really excited about the future. And I very much look forward to working with all of you. Thank you again for your participation. And kind of the next step is we're going to do an exec session with just the board and myself. But before we do that, I just want to be sure that there's no one here on the team who would like to add anything or ask any questions. I know this isn't necessarily like the fun stuff to talk about, like how well the women's merch sales are doing and all the cool things that, Laura's doing in Alaska and stuff. And but it's equally important that if you have questions that you raise them, you can also do it separately. But what I always tell the team, and I say this all the time, ask a question, because if you have it, somebody else has it too, and they're just afraid to speak up. So Dave Jefferson.
On the line, I'm removing it out of my mouth. But just from the agency, so the BLM side of things, anybody who's ever dealt with the grants and agreements world knows that not all agencies do things the same, or even within the same agency, you'll get variations from state to state. In the desire to make things a little more streamlined, one of the things that we're trying to do on the BLM side of things is adopt a model that came into play with the IRA money that came available. So we put together a master agreement for youth projects nationwide. So instead of a partner having to establish an agreement with each state or with each office, they could put the field could put a task, not a task order because that's contracting, but like a task. What's the term I'm looking for? Kind of like a task order, but it's not a contract. They could put it on the master agreement. The master agreement would have several partners on that agreement, and then instead of taking months to get an agreement in place in terms of a work task being accomplished, it could take 2 weeks. So we have this is the last year on our agreement with you guys. We're currently putting together a funding notice of funding opportunity. So whoever's going to be filling in for Danielle, this is really good information. We're going to try to do a blanket agreement for a lot of our partners, including, it'd be something you guys would want to apply to, so that we can be a little more flexible and on our feet with the field. Because a lot of times the money is a little scarce at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then it's really there's a lot of money at the end of the year. Vacant positions, different things like that. So the field should be able to react quickly and say, hey, we want to get this work done. Tread Lightly, is this something you guys could do? We could get something in place in like 2 weeks. So that I just wanted to kind of give a heads up there, and hopefully we can be successful putting that together, but we'll know in a month.
And Dave, that work would be led by the field office and office like the state office.
So the master one would probably be me, and then that kind of has to be ironed out. So it's like it would be my job to educate the field to say, hey, if you want to get something done, these are the rules. I can like kind of consult you, but you're going to work with Tread Lightly to get that done instead of having to set up your own agreement. So
that's good. Good advice.
Yeah, you probably didn't hear, but there was an exchange with Evan and Dave. We really appreciate that. And, that's one of the reasons why we want to be transparent with our partners, so they understand what we're up against, so that we can work together. It was one of the reasons why I was so heartened when Michelle shared when she was working with a partner in Arizona, and he said, the money we give Tread Lightly has more of an impact than any money we give to anyone else. That's why the quality of our work product is so important. We have to drive value to prove that we are an asset to our partners. And we know that our federal partners in particular have budget challenges. That is something that we're well aware of. and we empathize with that, and we want to work together to see how we can continue to drive impact regardless of what the financial statements look like and what funding looks like. Yeah.
Hey, this is Jeff. Before I forget, that's a very powerful testimonial that you should have in our outward facing decks when you're communicating with other governments and agencies. You know, you can see it as a pull quote. You see that in sales decks and that, but that's a testimonial right there. It's an endorsement from somebody just putting it in a quote like that and then tagging who said that.
That's a great point, Jeff. Thank you for bringing that up. And, it's so funny because I was driving in my car and I was chatting with Michelle, and she just kind of said that off the cuff and like, oh, that's gold. That's gold.
Yeah.
Ask him, can we say that at the board meeting?
Yes.
And he literally sent her a text message in quotes and said, this is what I want to say. And he added more in that was very, very effusive and very positive that we didn't even expand on. So I think that's a great point, Jeff. And I think that that's the way that we can communicate our value. And Michelle actually wanted to say something. What's up, Michelle?
So I've been in nonprofit.
Do you want to come up here?
Sure.
Michelle's just going to come up so we can see her.
So I'm pretty foreign to the for-profit world. I've worked in nonprofit my entire career for 20 plus years. I'm not an accountant. By no means am I an expert in that area. However, I have seen a lot of budget and build a lot of departmental budgets that are based on funding, grants, donations. So what I see as a red flag for me when I look at the budget, I think everything's wonderful. I think, Matt, you're revealing things to us. Everything's transparent. This is amazing. But I see donations at $150,000 for a $3 million nonprofit organization. That to me is, why aren't we cultivating more? How can we cultivate more? Why is our whole egg nest, in government grants? It's a very unstable world. I understand we work with agencies, but there are foundations out there, corporate partners, business, industry focused, can be unreliable because we're a luxury. Off-road's a luxury. So that can be very fluctuating. However, foundations that are built to support environmental change, conservation, those things are continuous. So looking to power companies, those that destroy the environment to provide services that we need on an ongoing basis are required to give back to the community. So can we put an effort this year to kind of put our eggs in some more baskets? So are we looking to these foundations that are long time supported, that have big vaults of money that we can maybe make some relationships with? Are we looking to these environmentally destroying, organizations or businesses that we all utilize to live our daily lives that have big buckets of money for us to take from? How do we cultivate relationships with wealthy individuals that want to give to us on an ongoing basis? So, when I hear things like, we didn't budget for raises this year as an employee, that's alarming. The cost of living is going up. We have children to feed. We have bills to pay. So what can we do as a team to increase that revenue aspect of our organization?
Thank you, Michelle. And those comments are really well received. For those who don't know, Michelle has spent literally decades in various nonprofits doing some of the coolest things I've ever heard with animals and celebrities and children, land managers. I mean, you name it. She has so many experiences that are super rich. One of the things that I wanted to highlight that I think is relevant here is that when I talk about Tread Lightly, I talk about our funding coming from grants, membership, and partnerships. But then when I look at the P&L, that's not how we show it. So it's actually hard. It's obfuscated where that is, because some of those numbers on the membership side do include things that have historically been sort of moved around within buckets and stuff. And so that's kind of that next level of transparency to understand that better. And I do think that there's an opportunity for increasing donations and just soliciting that. It's when you go to certain other foundations or nonprofits websites, it's almost annoying that as soon as you load the landing page, it says donate. For only $3 a month, you can feed a Land Cruiser oil and stuff. It's like, I mean, I like it. It's cool. So yeah, right. And so I think that there's opportunities for that. And when we look at this holistically, the tech stack that we are operating with today just needs to improve. And our tech stack, our web improvements, our CRM improvements will allow us to find out who are these people out there that may want to support us more that aren't today. One of my closest friends, he works for a university in the fundraising area, and he literally researches people to go out and identify and target for donations. It's really fascinating the level of sophistication that you can get when you have that view. You have to start the data and understand who those people are today, who we're talking to, who we're appealing to, and how to draw them in and make it frictionless. That goes to Mandy. How do you make digital payments easy? One of the things I've heard from a lot of our potential partners is, I really want to be a partner of Tread Lightly, but I don't have any cash. That can be a great opportunity to make a path for them to reward Tread Lightly when we reward their business. I bought a rooftop tent for the first time recently from a gentleman in Colorado. He runs a small shop. We had this exact conversation. I'm cash poor, but I love Tread Lightly. And I was like, I'm not ready to ink any deals yet, because when you ink a deal, that's a contract. That's something you have to perform on. But I said, what would it look like if maybe, what's your average ticket? $6,000, $8,000? Can you add just a little widget, a payment widget on your checkout that says, I'd love 1% of my purchase to go to Tread Lightly to help, support what they're doing. Can we add widgets for other people? The problem is, this is a guy who basically runs a business by himself. This poor guy works. I mean, Charlene can attest to this. He's never not working. To say, hey, can you go modify your website and add all this stuff? We don't really know how it works, but please do it for us. That doesn't work. That doesn't work for small business owners. But Mandy, when she becomes the digital payments ninja that I know that she can be, and here's the thing, I've worked with some incredible people, especially women in the digital payments industry, that I can bring into our ecosystem to help make us experts, people who are true leaders in this industry, to bring this expertise in-house to say, hey, small business, you want to partner with us, but you don't have the cash? Guess what? We can add a widget to your checkout page. You don't have to do anything at all. We'll take care of it for you. By the way, did you know that your website has this, and this vulnerabilities on your digital side? Let's advise you on how to just make your business a little bit more resilient. That's when partners look back and they say, what would I have done without Tread Lightly? Holy crap. They actually increased my cybersecurity. They told me that this website wasn't secure enough. They added a payment widget to my website, and me being able to advertise that I support Tread Lightly, that's increased my sales. I don't ever want to be in a partnership arrangement or any business arrangement where we win and someone else loses. I want everyone to excel, and ideally multiple partners all at once. One of the things I did when I was in the, I won't say what industry, but I was in a pretty intense finance role, and I was on a team that had to do negotiations. And there were some people that were literally the best negotiators in their industry, in their field. They were world renowned for their negotiation skills. They would salivate over crushing someone else. I want to bury these guys. I want them to go out of business because our deal is so good. And I'm like, hell, that's not sustainable. That is not sustainable. I want to help other people's business grow, because then that helps us too. How can we do that? Increase our value. Find things that make their business grow with ours. That scalability is really critical. Hey, Brandon, what's up?
So I don't know if this is entirely relevant to the current topic, but I've just been thinking about some conversations that I had at Off-Road Expo. And it wasn't an isolated incident, but I had a few people who were either treasurers for clubs or in a leadership position in a club that said that that they're no longer Tread Lightly members because we don't invoice them. And I don't know what happened a few years ago to where we stopped sending invoices to clubs to renew their membership, but we are missing out on membership dollars because of that.
That I'm really glad you brought that up, Brandon, and I hope you wrote down who they were, because I want to reach out to them and say, I'll get you an invoice. And a lot of that, that is, I hate to keep like bringing up this point, but that's why a stronger CRM makes sense. We have a bifurcated system between partners and members. Members are tracked one area, partners are tracked somewhere else. That is where you get that dislocation of the data and the contacts. And so that I hate to hear that. And I also love to hear that, because guess what that is? That's low hanging fruit. That's basically reaching out to people and saying, hey, we hear you, we see you. We love that you want to support us. Let's work together to make this more automated, more seamless, and more frictionless. That's a huge area of opportunity for us. And I'm glad you brought that up. Oh, one more thing about that too. When we talked about scaling our membership, RCA is a pilot, but it has gone so well that this will be a codified program as we move forward called Club Connect. Here is why that is a powerful tool that we can use to target other organizations that are similar. If RCA came to us and they said, well, we want a small business membership. We'll give you $100 or we'll give you $250. We'd say, great, thank you so much. That's amazing. But we tried to reimagine what that could look like. And what we said is, what does Tread Lightly need? Well, we want more members and we need more operating capital. So let's make them a deal where we discount the tier of membership they get. And when we discount that level of membership, we tack it onto the dues they're already paying to be a part of Raving Clubs of America. And we'll strip down the level of membership to where it's basically just discounts to our partners. That helps our industry partners we're already working with. We don't increase our hard costs. We're not mailing them anything. We don't have firm deliverables that we have said, we're going to do one cleanup a month for you. There's none of that. Anything we do for them is literally just a bonus. And as a result, we had over 500 new Tread Lightly members join through RCA, literally just in 4 months. And that grows every single day. And we've received over $12,000 in revenue from them just in 4 months. What we need to do is find scalable programs like that where we're not increasing our cost commensurately with revenue. We need to be smarter about how we're raising dollars, because if we say, oh, we have this great new partnership, but we also increase our deliverables, and we actually may lose money on the deal because our deliverables are more expensive than we thought, that actually hurts us. It increases our workload and it decreases our net income essentially at the end of the year. So I would love to have the board and folks here on the call think about, hey, what's another organization that we could potentially reach out to and say, we want to create a new membership program for you that's actually going to increase the adoption rate for your paid members. This is a beneficial way. And again, this is a partnership that doesn't just benefit us and RCA. It benefits literally everyone who's in the discount program too. They have access to new customers. So if folks are thinking about that, and I do care truthfully too about doing this with organizations who espouse our values. We want to be sure every single person, every program manager yesterday who talked about working with RCA, they said the same thing. They're enthusiastic, they're intelligent, they're motivated, and they're really fun to work with. So what organizations are out there like that have a large population of people who espouse Tread Lightly values, that we want to reward their business and we want to help them grow? So reach out to us. I think we can put together something really compelling for next year to grow membership. We just don't quite have the clarity of how big that opportunity is yet. It's something that we'll continue to scope.
Hey, Matt, this has been great conversation. Are there any other questions before we put the budget to vote?
Yes, we have one questions from Charlene. Yeah, please. Thank you.
Ooh, shocking. Hi, so I have some feedback and thoughts from yesterday and some challenges for the team, as I like to put it. So the first one on my list is media engagement. I didn't hear much about media engagement of how you're getting into the magazines, how you're getting onto podcasts, how we're making sure that happens. There are still magazines that exist out there. I talked to one while we were at the BFG KO3 launch. He's willing to put a full page in on how to be a tread appropriate person, right? At my hotel this morning, there was this Idaho off-road guide. Why isn't there a page in there about how to tread lightly? So as much as we have these nice signage that's going up at different places, how can we get some media engagement going on? Podcasts can have, you engage that podcast person, the hostess, and make sure that they're saying something on each one of their podcasts about it. So that's one of my challenges to the media team. The second one is a little bit stronger. I heard a lot of people say I'm too busy. I'm going to have to turn projects away. And that really bothered me, especially as I looked at some of the programs that were put up on the board. And I think we need to remember, and this is going to come across as a strong wording, but to stay in your lane, right? So tread lightly is education and sustainability for land. That's what Tread Lightly was built for. That's what it's about. That's what we're supposed to be doing. If you are diverting from that lane, are you taking your resources away from what the job is to go do other things? I'm not going to point out any programs that I think were maybe out of the lane. I think you can divert and look at your own programs and your own slides to see that. But one thing that Matt and I talked about last night is we're both I4WDTA instructors. Oh, you're not? Okay, okay. So we're gonna get you past it, yeah. So that's the International Four-Wheel Drive Trainers Association, certified trainer. There's many of us, Kurt that allows us to be here and etc. are as well. Those are the people, Nina is, those are the people that should be teaching people how to drive and how to do things. Again, staying in the lane, right? So if you are putting together something where it's a bigger program, it's taking a lot of time, it's taking a lot of energy, how can we put that back into maybe 3 other programs that you should be doing that stays within the land and sustainability? The third one I think is directly to Evan, but I think it's going to affect everybody, and change is hard. And it was really intriguing today to look at the spreadsheet where there's only now so many states that have personnel funding. So instead of looking at yourself as I own this state or I own this region, how do we look at each other as I'm really freaking good at this, and I'm really good at that, and I'm really good at that. And so now taking the personnel, instead of saying I'm in charge of this state, do what you're great at, because that's just going to excel everything times 100%. And I think that that's going to, again, in the life of being an employee, it's scary and change is scary. But I also think that at the end of the day, as Matt even stood up here and said, it's only as you continue to grow and be better that you become a better employee and become a better space and be more in that group to thrive. So that's one of the challenges that I'm going to set out there is break down the boundaries of, instead of being Miss Nevada, she's now Miss Motorsports, or, she's missed a lot of different things. And, she's the one that gets to go on the podcast. I don't know, but you all have your own individual strengths. And I think that if you focus on what those strengths are and write those lists down, like, letting Lowell do more of the partner agreements because he knows how to do that from years and years of doing it. Like, each one of you have that and put that together. And then I know it sounds silly, but I'm coming back to the 40th anniversary party. It's a big freaking deal. And, when we go to Jeff's statement about what to put on the program head for as you guys go out and sell, 40 years is a thing. Being, quote, in business for that long is a thing. And all the branding that goes out, starting here right now, should start saying 40th anniversary. We need to make that into a really big thing. And yeah, we need a party, but the branding really needs to be there. So those are my 4 feedbacks as I took my shower last night, what I was thinking about, and how can it be better for you to be more successful and focus on what's happening.
Thank you so much, Charlene. I love your engagement and enthusiasm. And, I've run into Charlene how many times this year at events? I mean, it's too many to count because she's so active, and I value that feedback and your opinion. It's funny, I actually do my best thinking in the shower too, which is unfortunate because paper gets wet in the shower. Otherwise, my wife will literally see it in the steam. She's like, "Why were you drawing all over the glass?" It's a true story. It's kind of funny. And to another point that you said, I had a program manager on the team reach out to me earlier this year, and this person said, I feel like I haven't done as many projects as others have because of a funding challenge. I just want to be sure I'm doing a good job. First off, that to me was a very heartening conversation to have just out of the gate. The fact that someone was thinking about that. And I said, and this person will confirm, I literally said, if you look out for the people on your team and you try to make them successful and you look at ways to make this organization better, that means everything. And so to your point, Charlene, if Laura's great at motorsports and she has, Lowell who needs a motorsport like question answered, that is how we get better. If someone like, Kirsten wears a ton of hats, she can actually help explain a lot of things to people. If she's out there constantly helping educate and make people better, more successful with their jobs. And that's what's interesting about an admin role is that admin is often overlooked, but I come from an admin background myself. Finance is something in the background. Nobody really cares until things go wrong, right? They don't care that you're doing a good job. So if you are constantly making people successful, and I had a couple of requests for her last minute that I failed to put in the request to get materials on time for events. She came in the office and got it done. I really appreciate that. So when people look out for, hey, this is a talent I have. I see maybe you need help with this. I'm going to help you. I'm going to make you stronger. I'm going to make you more successful. And that's my goal for everyone on this team, is to find ways that we can use our talents to make everyone stronger and better. And by extension, make our partners and members stronger and better as well. Was there anyone else who wanted to chat before we go back to Harold?
No, so that's great. Awesome discussion, and obviously budgets in this environment that we're in are important. And so I appreciate the efforts that Matt has led in getting real good clarity and transparency on it. And so I think if there aren't any more questions or any other comments, I'd like to get a motion from the board to approve the financials and the budget for next year.
I so motion.
Thank you, Jan. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Tom. All in favor? Any opposed? Nick has raised his hand.
We got Kristen and Charlene both raise their hands here too.
Okay,
I was
good.
saying in favor, Harold. Sorry, I was just using the little hand button.
I wasn't sure whether you were raising your hand for a yes or because you had a question, but
Down fast enough.
either way that works. So no opposed. So the financial and budget has been approved. Thank you.
On cue.
Hi. Sure. Yeah, I can. Oh, okay. Oh, I was a good word of that.
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Still in the middle of it.
I'm just gonna sit right here.
Okay. So how is everyone? Did you guys out in the sun a little bit too long? I feel like we left the puppy in the car without the window cracked. So sorry about that. I hope that everybody is hydrated, but I wanted to just wrap it up. I know, and I'm sure that the rest of the board will have some words too, and I'm sure that Matt has a few things to say, but I had really, really good conversations with almost everybody over the course of the last few days. And if I haven't talked to you, reach out to me. Like, I'd love to get to know you on a personal and professional level. But one of the things I had mentioned in the parking lot when everybody kind of walked out is just a special thank you to Michelle. She had a lot of courage coming up here and asking some hard questions today. And it's not stuff that we haven't thought about as a board. And so I just wanted to applaud her. You guys should clap because that's pretty damn cool. She got up and asked probably what was on everybody's mind, but I want to reiterate a couple things. Again, is that when we looked at the budget and when we looked at, planning for rest of this year into next year, it is a very conservative approach. So as I mentioned earlier, like there's a huge opportunity to make up some ground, and you guys are so smart. Like this group is incredible and you have the power to take action. And so I wanted to read you guys this. Has anybody heard of the author, Brian Tracy? Okay, all of you guys had your quotes memorized, but I didn't memorize mine. But he's the author of $1 Million Habits, and he has a lot of other books. I think he's written like 80 books. And he said, one of the marks of successful people is they're action-oriented. One of the marks of average people is they're talk-oriented. So there's a lot of talk, right? Like what comes out of this board meeting is going to be reflected in the actions that we all take. And so one of the other things that I was thinking about is like, okay, how do I give everybody like a tangible nugget? Like, what is it that you do that you like leave today and you're like, okay, I can do this. So for like lack of a better analogy, who's seen Dodgeball? Anyone? Okay. So this kind of sounds a little dodgeball-ish, but here we go. So the message that I really want to preach is the idea of working smarter, not harder. There's huge opportunities to make up some of the revenue gaps or to really look at like your role and responsibility and being like, what am I working on and what really truly matters? And so there's this exercise, it's called the 4 Ds, and it's do, delegate, delete, and defer. So if you have a pen or paper or your phone, like write this down. This is your homework. Okay, so do is what you're going to do today or in the coming weeks that really truly matters that only you can do. I love one of the ideas earlier of like, what's in your wheelhouse? Like we're all working together as a team. So nobody's working against each other. Like we're all working together on this. And also this is for you too, board members. Don't think you're out of this loop. Do, what do you need to do today? Delegate. What is somebody else on the team better at, faster at, smarter at than you are? What could you delegate to somebody else? And you could help take something that's on their plate. Delete. What are things that you're working on today that you absolutely do not need to be working on, that are not mission critical for where we're heading as an organization? And defer. These are things that you can just kick the can out a little bit. It's not important today. It might need to happen, but is it mission critical to actually move things forward? I'd like for you guys to think about too, like what do we call this? So we were brainstorming like fun rally cry ideas. Is Tyler still on? Tyler had a funny idea. Tyler had a lot of ideas. But ultimately, we'd love for you guys to think about what that is. Like think about this as a team opportunity. And I should have had you guys do this outside because it was like, it's really cool. But think of what this is that we're calling this time, where we all have to like link arms and make this happen and push the organization forward in some new and exciting ways. So those are my words of wisdom. Thank you again, Michelle, for calling out some of these concerns. And I do think there's an opportunity for more of those conversations. So I encourage anybody to reach out to me at any time. But you guys are awesome. You're doing a great job. You're under amazing leadership. And we just had a great discussion with the board too. Like the board also needs to support you all in these efforts. And so there will be new requirements and things that we're thinking about for board members to ensure that we're supporting you in the best way that we can as well. So anyway, thank you everyone. Thanks for allowing me to be here, for the opportunity to get to know everybody. But if there's anything that you need, I should have brought business cards. I didn't, but if you need my information, reach out to Matt. But thank you again, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Kristen said it really well, but I want to echo a couple of the sentiments, and this is kind of how we finished up the executive session on term and limits and terms, et cetera. But I know I speak for the board by saying to the team, you guys did an excellent job in the last 2 days to present where we are as an organization. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your diligence. Thank you for all the energy that you're putting into Tread Lightly, because you guys are the name and the face of Tread Lightly out in your regions. And so thank you guys for that leadership, and please lean into us as a board to get resources and expertise that can help you be successful. Because that's one of our roles, is to put you in a position where you can be successful. So thank you for all your hard work, everybody.
I think what's really fun about being in multiple boards is that they've seen your successes. So the fun part is, a couple of years ago, we were saying there's no way to find events. And now like that's solved, right? And the consistency of signage, and now that's solved. And the finding new branding and shirts and how all that stuff goes out, and now it's solved. I think that's the really cool part about now being on the board for multiple years and seeing that stuff come to fruition. And so again, that was something that I saw in your guys' presentations yesterday, is like, heck yeah, not only are we kicking butt out there doing really cool things, but also the challenges and the feedback, like what I always try to present at the end, is taken to heart, and then is like really taken to heart and batted out there and hit a home run most every single time. So yeah.
Well, and I guess I'll close this out just to say, again, thank you for all of your hard work. It's been such a joy to get to know each one of you over the last few months. Your work has inspired me. I am here because of the trust and the faith that I have in you, because this team has been so instrumental in really protecting what I love. I would not be the person I am without my experience going off-road with my friends and learning about nature and being connected with one another. You are the people to make this happen. And so I just want to thank you for your hard work. And I hope that we've illuminated some paths forward, that we have to become more innovative and we have to grow our impact. And now you understand what we're looking at, so we're all on the same page. I will continue to help you learn how to read P&Ls and find the data to help drive our business, but help each other. There's so much talent here, and there are people who are strong in certain areas and have growth opportunities in others. None of us are the same. None of us have the same skill sets. That's an asset. That diversity of knowledge, that diversity of background will actually just make us much, much stronger. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done to get us to this point. And then for the board and for the folks who have joined us virtually, again, thank you for your participation. We've had incredible discussions. We've had a really nice couple days together, and we're excited to continue with the engagement so that we can drive success, not just in FY25 and not just for the 40th year of Tread Lightly, but really for that next generation of growth for the next 40 years to take us all the way to Tread Lightly 2065. So we're celebrating 80 years then. So thank you for your help, and we look forward to working with you more.